My female, 34, sister, female 30, is excluding my 9-year son from her wedding because he looks like her ex-boyfriend. Throwaway because my sister follows my main account. So I got my sister Justine's wedding invitation in the mail yesterday and noticed it only had my name on it, not my son Liam's. I've been raising Liam alone since my husband Eric died in a car accident 7 years ago when Liam was just 2. Those first few years after Eric died were, God, I don't even like thinking about them. I was basically a zombie trying to take care of a toddler while working and dealing with medical bills from Eric's hospitalization before he passed. Justine was really helpful back then. She would take Liam for weekends sometimes when I was at my lowest, and even helped with some of the bills when I was drowning financially, which is why this whole thing is extra confusing and hurtful. Anyway, in our family, all the weddings have always included kids. My cousin had her 2-year-old as ring bearer last year. My other sister had this whole kids table with activities at her wedding. So I was like, this has to be a mistake, right? I called Justine thinking it was just an oversight. She told me it wasn't a mistake and that Liam wasn't invited. When I asked why, she said he looks too much like her ex Brad from 5 years ago, and it would bring up bad memories for her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She's excluding my son because he has dark hair and blue eyes. The resemblance is super generic, just basic coloring, not like they could be related. I told her that Liam had been excited about wearing his first suit to her wedding for months. She just said it was her wedding, and her comfort comes first. When I asked what I should tell him, she suggested I lie and say there's an age restriction. I refused to lie to my son, and she got defensive, saying I was making everything about Liam again and not thinking about her on her wedding day. Our relationship has always been complicated. Justine can be super self-centered, but then she'll do something incredibly thoughtful like she did after Eric died. It's confusing. I called my parents thinking they'd talk sense into her. But my mom just said, you know how sensitive Justine has always been, and suggested I not rock the boat and just get a babysitter. My dad basically agreed and said keeping the peace was more important than making a scene over this. I even tried talking to Tyler, Justine's fiancé, thinking maybe he'd be more reasonable, but he was completely on her side, saying she shouldn't have to deal with unnecessary triggers on her day. My 9-year-old son with a missing front tooth is a trigger because he has dark hair. Am I taking crazy pills here? The worst part was having to tell Liam. I admit I didn't handle it perfectly. I was still so angry and confused and probably should have waited till I calmed down. He was so confused and kept asking what he did wrong. He literally asked if it was because he lost his front tooth recently and thought maybe Aunt Justine didn't want him in wedding pictures with a missing tooth. It broke my heart. I didn't tell him the real reason because how do you tell a kid his aunt doesn't want him around because he looks like some random ex-boyfriend? Justine and Liam used to be so close. She used to take him for ice cream every Saturday when she lived closer to us. I don't understand how she could hurt him like this. What kind of person excludes their 9-year-old nephew from their wedding because of hair color and expects me to lie about it? The wedding is in 3 weeks, and I'm seriously considering not going. But then my whole family will say I'm being dramatic and unsupportive. I'm a single mom with a full-time job at the hospital, mostly overnight shifts. So I don't have a lot of time for drama or social media. But last night after Liam went to bed, I was so upset I started looking through Justine's Instagram, and I found something that puts this whole situation in a completely different light. I'm torn between using this information or keeping it to myself to preserve what's left of our relationship. This is so messed up. I feel like my entire family is making me think I'm crazy. Am I wrong for thinking this is completely unacceptable? Would I be the asshole if I just didn't go to the wedding? Or should I confront her with what I found? Edit. Since so many people are asking about what I found on Instagram, I'm not ready to share that yet. I need to think about whether using that information would just make everything worse. But it definitely suggests there's more to the story than Justine is admitting. To everyone saying I should just bring Liam anyway, I can't do that. The venue is a fancy vineyard with assigned seating, and they're doing plated meals based on the RSVP count. And honestly, I wouldn't put Liam through that kind of awkwardness. He's already hurt enough. Someone asked about Liam's relationship with the rest of the family. My parents love him, but they've always favored Justine, and honestly me too, over my middle sister. It's like this weird family dynamic where everyone is super careful around Justine's feelings. My mom called her sensitive, but really she's just been allowed to be selfish her whole life. And yes, she did help me after Eric died, which is why this hurts so much. I thought she actually cared about Liam. Now for the first update. So, a lot has happened since my last post. First, thank you to everyone who commented. I didn't expect that many responses, and I was pretty overwhelmed by all the support. I've been reading everything when I can between shifts at the hospital and taking care of Liam. I should start with what I found on Instagram. After that conversation with Justine about Liam not being invited, I was so angry and hurt that I couldn't sleep. After Liam went to bed, I started going through Justine's Instagram more carefully. What I discovered was that Justine has a second Instagram account. Not a secret one exactly, but more of a personal one that she doesn't really advertise. I actually forgot I even followed it because she mostly used her main account for the past few years. And guys, there were all these posts about Brad, the ex-boyfriend who Liam supposedly looks like. Not ancient history posts either. There was a picture of them from when they dated posted 3 months ago with the caption, "Sometimes I wonder what could have been the one who got away." 3 months ago, when she was already engaged to Tyler. There were other posts too, where she basically compared Tyler to Brad in really bad ways. Like one post said something about settling for safe instead of exciting, and another one about missing that spark that only one person ever gave her. I was in shock. All this time I thought she was just being ridiculous about Liam's appearance, but now it made sense. It wasn't about Liam at all. She's still hung up on Brad and probably can't handle anyone who reminds her of him because she's marrying someone else while still having feelings for her ex. I didn't want to just explode with this info without giving her one more chance about Liam. So I asked her to meet for coffee at the place we used to go to every week before she got engaged. That coffee meeting was awful. I tried to be careful with my words because I didn't want to just accuse her of still being in love with her ex. I started by asking if she'd reconsidered about Liam coming to the wedding. She immediately got upset and said the decision was final, and I needed to respect that. I tried to suggest that maybe excluding a child because he has dark hair and blue eyes like someone she dated 5 years ago seemed extreme. That's when she started getting defensive and accused me of not respecting her boundaries. I carefully asked if maybe there were some unresolved issues with Brad. She got super uncomfortable and asked what I was implying. I said excluding Liam seemed like a really extreme reaction to a relationship that supposedly ended years ago. She actually snapped at me that I was trying to psychoanalyze her, and when I finally just straight up asked if she was still hung up on Brad, she stood up, called me toxic and unsupportive, and stormed out. Left me sitting there with 2 half-full coffees and everyone staring. After that failed conversation, things got so much worse. Justine basically started turning the family against me. My mom called me the next day saying maybe my grief over Eric's death was making me overreact. That one hurt. Like, way to use my dead husband against me, Mom. And then Tyler sent this super long text bringing up old stuff, including how I missed Justine's college graduation because Liam had pneumonia when he was 2. He was in the hospital with a 104 fever, but apparently I should have left my sick toddler to watch Justine walk across a stage. He said this was just another example of how I always put Liam above Justine's important moments. Yes. My son comes before my adult sister's parties. Is that even a question? Everything blew up this past weekend at their combined bachelorette party at my parents' lake house. I almost didn't go, but my dad called and said it would break your mother's heart if I didn't show up. So I got a sitter for Liam again and went. When I got there, guess what I saw? 3 kids under 10 running around. My cousin's kids, who are 7 and 8, and my other sister's 5-year-old. So apparently children aren't a problem at wedding events, just my child. I was seething, but trying to keep it together. I managed to stay calm for most of the evening, even though several relatives kept giving me these weird looks like they'd heard I was some kind of problem. Justine was clearly avoiding me, which was fine because I was avoiding her too. But then after dinner, when everyone had been drinking for a while, I was nursing 1 glass of wine all night because I had to drive home. Justine decided to make this toast. She thanked everyone for supporting them in creating the perfect wedding day, and then looked right at me and added, now that certain issues have been resolved. I lost it. I completely lost it. Seeing those other kids running around while my son was at home with a sitter because he has the wrong color hair, and then that comment in front of everyone, something just snapped in me. I stood up after her toast and said very calmly, at least I think I was calm, but my heart was pounding, that since she brought it up, maybe everyone should know why Liam wasn't invited to the wedding. I explained that Justine had told me Liam couldn't come because he looked too much like her ex-boyfriend Brad. And then my hands were literally shaking. I connected my phone to the TV and pulled up the screenshots I'd taken of her Instagram posts about Brad. All of them. The one who got away post, the settling for safe post, everything. The room went completely silent. You could literally hear people breathing. Tyler's face, I will never forget how sad he looked. He just kept looking back and forth between the screen and Justine. Justine started crying, saying I was trying to ruin her life, and how could I do this to her? Tyler finally just walked out without saying anything. My dad started yelling at me for creating a scene, while my mom tried to comfort Justine, who was having a complete meltdown. I just grabbed my purse and left. I've been getting texts and calls nonstop since then. Apparently, Tyler has told Justine he needs time to think about their relationship, and the wedding, which is supposed to be this weekend, is basically in limbo now. Part of me feels terrible. Like, did I go too far? Should I have talked to Justine privately about what I found instead of showing everyone? But another part of me is like, she was going to exclude my son from her wedding for the most BS reason, while the real issue was she's still in love with her ex. And then she tried to turn my whole family against me when I questioned it. And honestly, I'm glad Tyler knows the truth before he marries someone who's clearly not over her ex. He seems like a good guy who deserves better than that. I don't know what's going to happen now. Justine hasn't directly spoken to me since the party. My parents are furious with me. But I've also gotten texts from my other sister and 2 cousins basically saying they're on my side, and Justine has always been the favorite who gets away with everything. I guess we'll see if there's even going to be a wedding this weekend. Edit. A lot of people are asking why I didn't just show Tyler the posts privately instead of doing it so publicly. Honestly, I didn't plan it that way. I just reached my breaking point at that moment and reacted. Maybe it wasn't the most mature way to handle it, but after weeks of being told I was wrong by my entire family and watching Justine lie to everyone's faces while my son was excluded for a completely fake reason, I just couldn't take it anymore. To those saying I ruined my sister's wedding, the wedding hasn't happened yet, and if it doesn't, that's because she was marrying someone while still being hung up on her ex. That's not on me. Also, she brought it up in her toast. She could have just left the whole thing alone. Thanks for all the support about putting Liam first. Some commenters on my last post suggested I was being too protective, but honestly, until you've been a single parent who's watched your child lose one parent already, you can't understand how it feels to see someone hurt them for no reason. And yes, I told Liam that Aunt Justine is working through some grown-up problems, and that's why things are complicated right now. He's actually been amazing about the whole thing. Kids are so much more resilient than we give them credit for. Now for the second update. So it's been about a month since everything blew up at that pre-wedding party, which feels like years ago to be honest. And wow, a lot has happened. First, the immediate aftermath. Tyler postponed the wedding literally hours after that disaster at the lake house. I found out from my cousin who texted me, "Holy shit, Tyler just called the venue to cancel the next morning." My phone wouldn't stop going off after I left the party. Like I had to put it on Do Not Disturb because it would not stop buzzing. Some people were actually supportive. My middle sister Kate called and was like, "That was a long time coming." And my cousin Melissa sent this long text about how Justine has always been allowed to do whatever she wants without consequences. But yeah, plenty of people were furious with me too. My dad called me unforgivable, his exact word, and my mom suggested I get therapy for my obvious jealousy issues toward Justine, which is just, I can't even. I mean, I felt terrible about how everything went down. Doing it publicly like that wasn't my finest moment, I'll admit that. But at the same time, I was so tired of being made to feel crazy for standing up for my son. And honestly, Tyler deserved to know what he was walking into, right? Speaking of Tyler, he actually called me 3 days after everything happened. I almost didn't answer because I thought it was going to be more yelling. But when I did, he He just asked if we could meet for coffee. We met at this little place halfway between our towns, and I was so nervous I could barely function. I spilled my coffee all over the table within like 30 seconds of sitting down. Classic me when I'm stressed, ugh. But Tyler was surprisingly calm. He said he'd actually had suspicions something was off with Justine for months, but he thought it was just wedding stress. He kept finding her looking at old photos, being secretive with her phone, that kind of stuff. He said seeing those Instagram posts was painful, but also a relief. Like, he finally wasn't crazy for feeling something was wrong. He actually thanked me, said I saved him from marrying someone who wasn't fully committed to him. Not that this makes me feel any less guilty about how I handled it, but still. Justine, on the other hand, well, she went through phases. First was pure rage. She sent me this 3 a.m. text that was basically just one long paragraph about how I ruined her life and she would never forgive me, and how could I do this to my own sister, and did I enjoy humiliating her. Then she blocked me everywhere. Then like radio silence for 2 weeks. My parents wouldn't even talk to me, except when absolutely necessary about practical things. My mom would literally call my middle sister to ask about Liam instead of calling me directly. It was so childish. And then Justine called me, out of nowhere. I almost fell over when I saw her name on my phone. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. She said she'd been seeing a therapist, literally started going the day after the party, and realized she'd been unfair to Liam. She actually used the word projected, said she projected her unresolved feelings about Brad onto Liam. I didn't know what to say. I was shocked. Justine has never admitted being wrong about anything in her entire life. She asked if we could all meet at our parents' house to talk things through. I really didn't want to go, like really didn't want to, but she sounded so different, more self-aware than I've ever heard her. So I reluctantly agreed. That family meeting was intense. When I got there, my parents and Justine were just sitting in this awful silence in the living room. The second I walked in, my dad immediately asked if I was happy now that the wedding was called off. Before I could even respond, and trust me, I had some thoughts, Justine interrupted and said, "It wasn't my fault." My parents looked completely shocked. Then she just started talking. She admitted she'd been in contact with Brad throughout her entire engagement, and not just random texts. She met him for coffee, twice, while engaged to Tyler. My parents' faces, oh my freaking God. They had no idea. I asked her the obvious question, why agree to marry Tyler if she wasn't over Brad? She completely broke down crying, like the ugly crying where you can't catch your breath. She said she thought getting married would force her to move on and forget about Brad, that Tyler was such a good guy and offered stability, and she thought that's what she should want. I pointed out how incredibly unfair that was to both Tyler and Liam. Using Tyler as some kind of backup plan while excluding my son from her wedding because he reminded her of the guy she actually wanted to be with. Not okay. And then something happened that I never thought I'd see. My mom actually admitted they'd enabled Justine's self-centered behavior for years. She told us they'd always made excuses for Justine because she was the baby of the family, and that wasn't fair to us older sisters. I was completely shocked. Justine asked if I would bring Liam over so she could apologize to him directly. Part of me was hesitant, like, I'm not just going to offer up my kid for more potential hurt, but she seemed genuinely remorseful, so I agreed. When I brought Liam over later that day, Justine got down on his level. She was literally kneeling on the floor to be eye to eye with him and told him she was really sorry for not inviting him to her wedding. She said she had grown-up problems that she wrongly let affect how she treated him. I was standing there preparing to comfort my son, but you know what that amazing kid did? He just hugged her and immediately asked if they could start getting ice cream on Saturdays again like they used to. I was so happy I could cry. The past few weeks have been different. The family dynamic has shifted in ways I never expected. My parents have started examining their pattern of favoring Justine and have actually apologized to me for not supporting me more after Eric died. My dad even offered to watch Liam overnight sometimes, so I can have a break, which in 7 years of single parenthood has never happened before. Justine and Tyler are slowly talking again. They're doing couples counseling, and Tyler is making her work to rebuild trust. She says he's setting actual boundaries with her for the first time, which is probably good for both of them, honestly. And yesterday, Justine called to ask if Liam would consider being a junior groomsman when they eventually reschedule the wedding. They're planning a smaller ceremony for next spring. Liam was thrilled. He's already talking about what color suit he wants to wear. Do I regret how I handled things at that party? Kind of. Exposing those Instagram posts was probably not the most mature approach. But at the same time, would any of this have happened if I'd kept trying to address it privately? Justine had shut me down every time I tried to talk to her one-on-one. Our relationship is still complicated. We're not suddenly best friends or anything. We're rebuilding trust slowly. Weekly family dinners, occasional therapy sessions together, which are awkward as hell but probably necessary. But for the first time in forever, I don't feel like I have to choose between keeping the family peace and protecting my son. And seeing Liam excited about being in his aunt's wedding makes all the mess almost worth it. Almost. Edit. Some people are asking about Tyler and why he would consider getting back with Justine after all this. From what I understand, they're taking it very slow. He told me he loves her but isn't rushing back into wedding planning. He said something like, "I needed to know who I was really marrying, and now at least we're being honest with each other." They've been together for 3 years, so I guess he's not ready to throw it all away without trying. To those asking if I think Justine is actually over Brad now, honestly, I don't know. She says the therapy is helping her understand why she held on to that relationship so intensely. Apparently has something to do with seeking her father's approval. I don't know therapy stuff. I'm hopeful, but definitely not naive about it. Time will tell, I guess. A lot of you are asking how Liam is doing with all this. He's actually been amazing, way more resilient than I expected. When I tried to explain that grown-ups sometimes make mistakes because of complicated feelings, he just shrugged and told me he understood, because sometimes he gets mad about one thing when he's really sad about something else, like his dad. Kids understand more than we give them credit for sometimes.